Hello, my name is Logan Penny, and I'm just going to show you an introduction to using material parameter collections. And we are going to learn how to do this by pushing a button and then releasing. We can change the color of our character. Now this is a basic project that I have used the third-person game template, and there's starter content. You don't need to use starter content. I just added it in case I'm going to use anything. And I created this folder called material, and our first setup is going to be going into the materials, right-clicking, going into materials, material parameter collection, and clicking on that. And we're going to name this MPC_01. Double click on that. We're presented with this window where we have scalar parameters and vector parameters. To demonstrate material parameter collections, I'll be using one scalar and one vector. So the vector, if you are unaware, we can use for color. So we're going to change this to say base color, and that's in the parameter name, and that's important when we start using the collection within the materials and within blueprints. By default, I'd like this to be 0.5 across the board, so we are left with this mannequin gray. Let's call it that. In the scalar parameters, we're going to add a value. We're going to keep it at 0, and we're going to use this to change the metalness, and we'll call that metal. And then we will save and close that. We're done with that. Okay. Inside of the content browser, in my material folder that I just created, right-click, make a material. Let's call this master material MM01. Very basic material setup that we're going to go in here. And normally to get the color, I would hold 3 and get a 3 vector constant and then plug that into the base color. Double click on that, and then we can change that to whatever color we want. But instead of doing that, we're going to be using what's called a parameter collection parameter. So if you right click and type in COL and one more L, then we're going to have collection parameter. It's going to start off by saying unspecified, and we need to specify it. And since we already made the material parameter collection 01, we will click on MPC01, our parameter name. Let's grab the vector, the base color, and pop that into our base color. And that color that we made in the collection is reflected in the material here. Now I'm going to highlight that, Control D, duplicate it, and then instead of using the base color, I'm going to scalar. I want to use a metallic. And when setting up metal inside of materials, it's generally an on or an off. So that's what we're going to have here. It's not metallic, and if we want it to be metallic, we will set it to 1. It's currently set to 0 within the material parameter collection. So you won't see any change reflected in the material because we aren't using metalness. And then I'm going to save that. And we are done with the material. Okay, so the next step would be to open up the level blueprint by clicking on this node looking button here, and you'll see it says list of world blueprints available to the user for editing or creation. And I will go down to level blueprints, open level blueprint. We already had it open, and inside the event graph we have nothing set up here. And we will go ahead and set up our small function here. So you can use any key you'd like. If you right click, type in keyboard, I'm going to use the 1 key. Okay, and we'll zoom in here, and it is pressed, released, and key, and we are going to do some things off of the pressed and released. Okay, and what I would like to do is I would like to change the color of the character and change the metalness of the character when I press 1. I want that to happen over a specific amount of time. In order to do that, I will drag off here, type in timeline, add a timeline. Let's call this color metal change. We're going to want it playing from the start. And we're going to want it to reverse when we release the key. So when we hold down the 1, it will activate the timeline, and when we release 1, it will reverse the timeline. Double click on the timeline that we made, color metal change. Let's start with the easiest one, and gives you the option of length right away, and we're going to change that to 1 second. And I'm going to add a track. I'm going to click on the green plus track button, and we have float, vector, event, and color. We're going to be using the float track and color track. So I'll start with the float track for the metal. Name that metal. I'm going to hold shift, click here, and shift, click here. It doesn't matter where you click on the timeline, because we're going to highlight the keyframe and type in the actual value we want it to be at. The first key is at 0 with a value of 0. The second key would be at time 1 with a value of 1. Now, in order to see the curve easiest, click on zoom to fit horizontal and zoom to click vertical. I'm going to select the bottom key here, right click, and change this to user. You can also click on it and then hit the 2, and that will bring it to user. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. You can use any of these to change the key interpolation faster. Now that we have that set up, I will twirl it up. I'm going to add our color track, and we know that we want to start with the same color that we had set up in our material parameter collection. That is why I'd set this to 0.5, just easy to remember. And then over 1 second, we're at 0 here, and 1 second here. We're going to change this color to, let's have it go into an orange value. All right. Maybe even a more orange, a deeper orange. I'm going to click on new track _1, hit F2, and then I'm going to call this color. We can close that out. Now inside of our timeline, we have the color and metal parameters. Okay. I'm going to right click and I'm going to type in material, and then I'm going to grab our set vector parameter, and that will be for the color. And then I'm also going to type in material again, and I'm going to select the set scalar parameter material, and that will be for our metal. And this, we want this, and here we have a collection, a parameter name, and a parameter value. Similar in the vector collection, parameter name, parameter value. So in the collection, it's MPC01, and the name is base color. In the next one, we're going to select the same thing, parameter collection 01, and the parameter metal. And I want this to go to 1. That was not needed, so now the value says 0 here, but we've set it up to go to 1 inside of here. So if we drag off of the metal, that will go up there. I'm just going to organize this so it's lined up nice. So when we update, we're going to change the metal from 0 to 1. And then the second step we will do is we're going to change the color from the color we have. We'll pull off here. I'm going to actually break the linear color, and then from here, the same thing, make linear color. And the reason I'm doing that is to show you that you can actually pipe in whatever values you want. You don't have to just use the values in here. So we can either drag off here straight to here, which works totally fine. When you double click on a wire, it adds a reroute node so you can clean things up. So we can go right from our color in here, or we can also break the color, change it by a value, and then link it up here if we would like to do that. Just wanted to show you that both options are viable. Okay, so very simple. We push the 1 key, and from the beginning, we change the metalness to 0 to 1, and we change the color from default gray to our orangey red color. I'm going to hit compile and then save. And then if we hit play here and I hit 1, nothing happens. Well, that's because we haven't assigned the material to anything. So let's test it out on a ramp first. And we can see as I hold it down, it's changing color. But I don't want to do that. I want it to happen on the third person blueprint. So if you go into your third person, click on blueprints, open up third person character, go over to the viewport, click on the mesh, which is our character, and we can see we have these two materials. One of them is this global material over this whole body, and the second one is just for the Unreal logo in the center. And we are going to get rid of those by going into our material, highlighting our master material, back into the third person blueprint, and because I have it selected, when I hover over the arrow it says use selected asset from content browser, so now I can just push that on top of those. You'll see it's not lined up perfectly because the logo has some normal maps and we're not using any normal maps. We're just using a very basic material to illustrate the point of material collection parameters. Compile, save. We don't need that anymore. Just make sure we saved everything else. Close off our material. We have our third person blueprint, level blueprint. Inside the map, I'm going to click F11, make it full screen. I'm going to hit Alt-P and then play. So we have our character, he runs around, he does everything by default, which is great. And then holding 1, there we go. He's turned metal and he's changed color, and letting go, and he's back to his default white. Now you don't have to, you can only hold it for a little while and he only change a slight amount of color. And that's fun too. And this is just a way to begin to understand how to use material parameter collections. Now you could also have it set up in a situation and expand upon this where, you know, when the character is in metal mode, they can do certain tasks and abilities, and when they're not in metal mode, they cannot. You can also set up to create timers, so you can click the 1 key and it will turn you metal and then automatically go back when the timer is up. And those are just some ideas that can be used to explore further functionality with the material parameter collection. I hope you found this tutorial useful, and I look forward to hearing any feedback you have. Thank you. Bye.